All right, welcome to We the People on WKMNews.com with Josh and Rick. We're here with former Congressman Mike Sodrel. Appreciate you coming and joining us today.
Well, glad to be here, Josh.
And Rick. Thank you, sir. We, for those who, of the former 9th District, now the 6th District, Mike is the entrepreneur to the max. He started out bagging groceries, and then he determined that he was going to put a trucking company together which now employs hundreds of employees, as well as having the free enterprise bus system, which I happened to take to Washington, D.C. for a while a couple years ago. But glad you're here, pal.
Actually, I started out mowing grass, though.
Was that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was before bagging groceries.
Okay. Now, what I was going to do, and I told Mike this, I said, we could do a lightning round as far as, the mess that the world's in, as well as our country. But I wanted to I was thinking, he wrote a book, and it was a very good book. But I think Josh wants to ask you an immigration question first.
Okay.
Oh, here's the book. Definitely worth reading. I found it interesting. I'm actually going to go off script a little bit here, and which I typically do. Okay, so what I found interesting about this book, he talked about the shape our world's in, our country's in. There's a lot going on, but what really, I'm an entrepreneur, always have been. You're an entrepreneur. I think the opportunity this country has offered is just incredible. Can you tell us a little bit, just real quick, where you came from? Bagging groceries, and then is the opportunity still there? I'm a young person, so is the opportunity there today?
The opportunity is shrinking. It's the biggest challenge in business today is government. I mean, it's like getting permits or being inspected and audited and regulated, and I think the opportunities get smaller every year. It's unfortunate. I mean, I've been asked to go talk to some groups in college, and I'd love to give them, the rah-rah, go get them, you can do this, and the American dream, and it's really more and more difficult every year.
Right. It's sad.
And it's unfortunate.
It is.
That's the engine that has created the highest standard of living on the planet.
Right, exactly.
Why the title, Citizenship, Government Wolves?
Government shepherds.
No, I'm sorry.
I like it. It works both ways.
That's Freudian.
Somebody asked me where did I come up with that. I said, well, after all, they herd us and they shear us and they swear they're doing it because they love sheep, right?
That was Freudian, sorry.
I tried to take kind of the political world from 1215 at Runnymede when they stuck a sword to King John's throat and said, here, sign this, King, we want some of your power. And he signed the Magna Carta, and take it up to current and do it in 185 pages that people could read, which is, in fact, one of my mechanics was one of the first to order the book. And he caught me down the shop one day and he said, hey, he said, as long as it took you to write that book, he said, I didn't know how big it was going to be. And I said, well, Bill, I said, it takes a long time to write a really short book. Well, I spent most of my time trying to make the chapters shorter and the paragraphs shorter and the sentences shorter and the words shorter. It's like keep taking things out that didn't need to be in there. It's just so. That was the whole goal, because if somebody won't read the book, if they don't finish the book, if they get tired or bored or whatever, you're not doing any good. So,
what kind of government do we have? And I want to do a spoiler alert as far as a local icon. Lee Hamilton was a liberal Democrat, even though he represented himself to be a conservative back here. What does Lee Hamilton believe our system of government is? And what do you know it to be?
Well, I've heard him say many times that it's a representative democracy. In fact, he wrote a book about, how does Congress work and why should you care? And in the book, he says the same thing as a representative democracy. And I would just repeat the words of Ben Franklin after the Constitutional Convention. He was on the street and some lady stopped him and said, sir, what kind of government do we have? And he said, a republic, madam, if you can keep it.
That's right.
He knew how difficult it was going to be to keep it. So we, in fact, have a constitutional republic. I've been passing constitutions out for probably 25 years. I don't know how many thousands of them I'm giving out. In the last few years, when I give them to somebody, I said, here, it's kind of like ties or dresses or something. If you hang on to this long enough, it could come back in style. They're not using it right now, but it could come back. So you'll be prepared when it does.
Well, I said if we put it on the internet, the NSA might actually read it.
So I'll go to my immigration question then off of that. I think you talk about, the Constitution, maybe someday will come back in style. That's interesting because we're supposed to be a nation of laws. It's there. It's not changed. We should follow it. So immigration's a great example of you start ignoring this, you start ignoring other things. I think you voted for, and President Bush signed 2006, an act to basically help start securing our border. 700 miles of fence. Fence wasn't built. Since then, they've actually tried to pass.
And 6,000 additional Border Patrol agents.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Since then, they've tried to pass resolutions to enforce the first law, and they can't get that passed. But yet the law's on the books.
Yeah.
What do you do with that?
When I was in Congress, they said, well, we need comprehensive immigration reform. I said, no, we had that back in the 80s. Ronald Reagan got drawn into that. Well, here, we'll give amnesty to the folks that are here illegally, and we'll secure the border and life will be good. Well, they didn't secure the border. So I said, no, we're going to secure the border, and don't even talk to me about immigration reform until the border is secure. And we indeed did pass a bill given enough resources to build a fence, physical fence where it made sense, an electronic fence where a physical fence didn't make sense, and put 6,000 new Border Patrol agents, and the border is still not secure.
Yeah.
And anything you do to make it easier to come here and become a U.S. citizen, anything that you do without securing the borders is going to make the situation worse. I mean, it already is being made worse because these underage people think they can come here and they're going to get citizenship. We're not going to deport them, and they won't be sent back. Their parents send them here or they come here. So, we have to secure the, and it's not just immigration. You got drugs coming across the border. You got potential terrorists coming across the border. You got all kinds.
Bottom line, we don't know what's coming across.
Absolutely, we don't.
Yeah.
Definitions of things. What's the difference between liberty and freedom?
Well, I like the word liberty, and if you look back through most of the founding documents and the founders, they very rarely use the term freedom. They more often use the term liberty. And to me, it's a matter of discipline. It's like freedom does anything it wants to do. If you're just, you're free to do whatever you like. Liberty carries with it some self-responsibility, some self-discipline, that you do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And not because the law requires it, but you're self-disciplined. So I kind of see freedom is no discipline, liberty is self-discipline, and government is imposed discipline. Now I hear people use the word freedom all the time. I don't find it objectionable. I just think it's, and if you look it up in the dictionaries I have say freedom is kind of an excess of liberty, or too much liberty, if you will. Anybody here in the Navy, they talk, the sailors go on liberty. Well, that doesn't mean you're free to do anything you want to do, because if you do the wrong thing, your liberty gets canceled. It's like you lose your liberty because you didn't do the right thing. So it's I think it's a better term than freedom is.
New left versus new right. I think that's some terms out of your book. New left versus new right.
It's you hear these terms all the time, the left and the right, and you hear them on the news, and they'll talk about the far right and the far left, and but find that most people have a hard time getting a real handle on that. So I go into communism, socialism, fascism, to try to do a comparison, one-word comparison where I can, if I can get it down that simple. It's like the difference between a communist and a socialist is the difference between bullets and ballots. they're both going to the same place. They both believe in the elimination of private property. They have the same end in mind. But the communist thinks you have to get there through armed revolution. There's no other way to do that. Marx and Engels with the Communist Manifesto. The socialist believes you can get there with legislation and elections. A little slower process, but you can get to the same place. The fascist basically believes that it doesn't matter who owns it as long as the government controls it. So government controls everything. If you looked at Germany in the Second World War, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Messerschmitt, they were still privately owned, but the government told them when to turn the lights on, when to turn the lights off, what to build, how many to build, who to hire, who to fire.
Sounds similar to now, right? In Germany.
It's not. So somebody that's on the right, in my mind, is somebody that believes in constitutional government, believes in individual liberty, believes in those things that made America great. The founders believed in. Somebody that's on the left, I see very little difference between a communist, a socialist, or a fascist. They're just kind of different terms for the same thing. I mean, think about it. Hitler's party, it's nicknamed the Nazi Party, but it was actually the National Socialist Workers' Party. The USSR was the United Soviet Socialist Republic. So the fascists called themselves socialists, and the communists called themselves socialists, as well as the socialists. So it's like they're only incremental differences.
What's economic fascism?
Well, it's basically when you create an illusion of ownership. I say an illusion because you may hold title to it, but government tells you what you can do with it and what you can't do with it, and how you can use it, and how often you can use it, and what you can, where it doesn't matter if it's farming, what you can grow and how much you can grow. And, so I mean, in a fascist state, basically, you may have ownership, but it's only illusory. It's not true. It's not real.
Like GM.
I often ask people, I said, look, let me ask you, would you rather have a lease car that you know you will never own, but you can drive it anytime you want to? You can take anybody you want to. You can do anything with it you want to. Or would you like to have a car that you own the title? You got it. It's clear title. It's your car. But somebody else tells you when you can drive it, and where you can drive it, and who can ride in it, and how many miles it goes. And most people say, I'll take the lease car. So I mean, ownership should mean that it's yours to do with as you please, as long as you're not using force or fraud on your neighbor. But it doesn't really. I said it's kind of an illusion these days.
This touches on the book. Sorry, this touches on the book, but it's narrowing. Things keep getting closer. The clock keeps ticking. What needs to happen in our country to pull it back from the abyss?
Well, as you know, when I was in Congress, I was a co-sponsor of the fair tax, and did everything I could to try to get it to the floor for a vote.
What's the fair tax? What's the fair tax?
Well, the fair tax is basically a nationwide sales tax that eliminates every other tax. Eliminates capital gains tax, income tax, death tax, any and all tax. It eliminates the IRS. It eliminates all of the tax regulations. It gets rid of about 125,000 folks that are at the IRS. It just makes life a lot simpler. I mean, think about a pizza place in North Vernon. You got 50 employees. You don't have any 941 forms anymore. A 941 form, for those in the audience, is you have to hold out Social Security and withholding taxes and send all these forms in to the government, tell them how much you withhold and send the checks in. And life is good. If they earn $50, give them $50. They pay their tax when they go down to Walmart. It's collected with sales. It makes us more competitive here at home. It makes us more competitive abroad. Because Boeing, when they build an airplane, when you take all the payroll taxes out of that airplane, and all of the corporate taxes and all the other taxes, And now when they sell it abroad, there is no tax because there's only a sales tax and it doesn't apply, when you ship it out of the United States.
And that actually makes products cheaper at each stage of development.
Makes everything cheaper, yep. And, but not only cheaper, it starts pulling back that intrusion of government. I mean, the IRS is like, it wouldn't be so bad if they were just collecting the tax, but it's like all the data they collect, all the things they want to know, all the forms they send out, it's like, you just make life so much simpler. You asked earlier about starting a business.
Yeah.
A lot easier to start a business. You got one form, collect the tax when somebody buys a pizza.
So I think maybe political will hasn't been there in the past. I don't know if it's a new tax. It's there's a lot of objections to that. But we do have a little bit of a scandal that should be a whole lot of a scandal with the IRS right now. Do you think now's the time? Do you think there's someone out there to push this?
Well, it would not go anywhere right now because of the Senate. I mean, I watch the news every night and it says, do nothing Congress, do nothing Congress, do nothing Congress. No, it's do nothing Senate, do nothing Senate, do nothing Senate. The House has sent 356 bills over to the Senate that are sitting on Harry Reid's desk. I think that's an approximate number, but that's pretty close. So the Senate's not doing anything. They're not acting on any of the bills that the House is sending over there. And that the House is reluctant to have a big floor fight, which they would. And, go twisting arms and taking names, and you get a bill passed so it can go sit on Harry Reid's desk. I mean, it discourages the House from doing a lot of things because they know it's not going anywhere.
At the same time, though, the House has a constitutional role.
They do.
That they need to uphold. They also have they have some teeth. It's called the purse strings, and I don't see them doing a whole lot with that. Can you explain why? Is there an excuse for that?
No, I agree. And when I was there, I'd often tell the folks in leadership, I don't care what the Senate does with it. We're not the Senate. We need to pass the legislation. We need to tell the people what legislation we passed and send it to the Senate. Unfortunately, both houses are getting a bad rap here about not getting anything done, when in fact it's the Senate that's not doing anything. The House is debating issues.
Right.
And they are passing legislation.
The role of the House, the purse strings of the Congress, why can't they unilaterally defund the IRS, defund NRA, defund the Department of the Interior, defund anything they want to? Because they're all, to me,
well, it just says that bill has to originate in the House.
Okay.
It still has to have the privilege.
But they don't have any, we'll stop this.
Unilateral, no, they don't have a unilateral. Now, what they did is when, there was a couple of bills where they cut off funding to a court, like there was a bad decision made, and they said, we're passing a bill that says you can't spend one penny of the taxpayers' money to enforce the order that you just sent out. So, I mean, they do have...
Yeah.
But
they could send clean spending bills.
Get through the Senate.
They could send clean spending bills to, fund the military, etc., leaving everything else out. And there doesn't seem to be a lot of will to do that.
Yeah, that bothered me the worst. Where they bundle up bills they think you have to vote for with things that you don't want to vote for.
Yeah.
And think they're going to get it passed in that fashion. It was a major irritation to me.
Yeah. Do you feel like that, speaking of that, kind of that bundling effect and I call it the gravy train, everyone's trying to send gravy back to their home district kind of mentality, and that exists on both sides of the aisle, really. But do you think that would be one of the biggest obstacles to something like the fair tax? Because the IRS, with this much regulation, is a lot of loopholes that's been put in there.
The biggest obstacle is Congress spends 50% of its time on tax-related issues. The lobbyists spend 50% of their time lobbying Congress on tax issues. So lobbyists don't like the fair tax because that either means the lobbyists are going to make half as much money or there's going to be half as many of them. And then neither one of them looks like a real good alternative to the lobbying group. So they lobby all these organizations against the fair tax. Oh, no, you don't want that. That's terrible. Look at all these bad things it'll do for your industry, for the housing industry, for whatever industry. And then you've got people in the House that don't want to lose the opportunity to get campaign contributions.
Right.
from people that come in and kiss the ring and want a tax deal, want them to vote for a tax loophole or a tax benefit or something to do with taxes.
Right.
So it's, there's just a lot of inertia against it, and they say,
Yeah.
oh, we can't do it. I said, you do realize that we operated this country longer without an income tax than we have with an income tax? I mean, 16th Amendment, that's what kind of the reason I passed a lot of these out. I said, get your little book out and look up the 16th Amendment of the Constitution.
1912?
18, I believe. I have to look it up again, but early in the 20th century. And we ran up until that time with duties, ex post, and those excise taxes, which fair tax basically would be an excise tax, if you want to call it that.
That was during Wilson's deal, and Lee Hamilton chaired the Woodrow Wilson Progressive School of Government.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I put that in.
Yeah, 16th, 17th, 18th Amendment all passed during.
You had a quote about church and state, and I'll read it. Faith should give you a reason to live and a reason to die, not a reason to murder. What do you mean?
I got thinking about it. I read a book by Whittaker Chambers called Witness. He was a witness against Alger Hiss and some of the high-placed communist spies way back when. And in his book, he said, there are two great faiths in the world today. Writing in the I think it was like late 30s. He said, two great faiths in the world today, Christianity and communism. He said, one is a belief in man, the other is a belief in God. Well, there are three great, if that's the case, there are three today. Christianity, communism, and Islam. If he meant by great faith, a faith that had the will and the means to basically, I want to say, spread their faith all over the world, that would have been communism and Christianity at the time. Both of them were. Islam always had the will. They didn't have the means. We gave them the means with oil money in the 50s. And Islam, unfortunately, teaches people to kill. It's okay to be willing to die for your faith. I'm willing to die for mine. But it's not okay to be willing to kill for your faith. That's the point. And that's what they teach, kill for your faith. And I think a lot of Americans underestimate the danger to our society, to our way of governance, to our culture that is presented by Islam.
This is We the People with Josh and Rick, the voice of liberty here in the Ohio River Valley on WKMnews.com. Your turn.
All right, so let's talk really quick. You talked about the Christian faith, the Islam. Right now, Christians are being just literally slaughtered in Iraq. Children being beheaded. I don't see the outcry. I don't see reaction from the president all the way down. I mean, I'm not going to accept anybody. I don't see the reaction that I would think you should see. What could this president be doing? What should he be doing? Because he just pulled.
But even when President Reagan wasn't going behind the Iron Curtain, even when he wasn't physically going behind the wall, he did stand up by the wall and say, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. I mean, you can lend moral support. Right. You can object. You can, and you can make people aware of what's going on. I don't know. We become so in this tolerance and political correctness has become so ingrained that I think some ministers are afraid to stand up and say anything. It's like somebody might call me a name or something. Like they might say I'm intolerant. I have to be tolerant. Well, no, I don't have to be tolerant of people that are killing people. Sorry.
Right.
But they ought to stand up and say so. And it's everybody's silent. It's amazing. And I think it's worse for Christians right now than it is for Jews. Even though there was a rabbi assassinated in Miami over the weekend. He was on his way to synagogue. And anti-Semitism is on the rise, but I think not any faster than Christianity is on the rise. Sudan, another place where you got literally hundreds of thousands of Christians being slaughtered.
Right.
And nobody says anything.
We're speaking to former Congressman Mike Sodrel of the former 9th District, and we have Luke Messer, who's now over that almost same area. How do you think he's doing?
I am really impressed. I am. I think Luke's doing a good job. And when you go to Congress as a freshman, you kind of you're not only learning the system, but you're developing some relationships and getting done. I think Luke's doing a bang-up job. I'm really impressed. I'm pleasantly surprised.
Well, one of the things he said even a couple weeks ago, he said, we stand with Israel. And I know that's a subject near and dear to your heart as well as ours. But why is Israel so important to the Middle East? And I know we're bouncing around a little bit. But.
Well, there was a Christian minister that said once, you can explain Judaism in the absence of Christianity. You cannot explain Christianity in the absence of Judaism. It's like what Christians need to understand is your Savior was a Jew. And his disciples were Jews. And most of the converts were Jews, early on, before he started converting Gentiles. And so, I mean, it's and the Bible's pretty clear. If you believe the Bible, you read Genesis, it said, I will bless them that bless thee, and I will curse them that curse thee. So, pretty clear to me. I mean, it's not rocket science.
Our foreign policy is a lot of trouble then.
Yeah.
That's right.
And people say, well, why don't they give land for peace? Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? I would encourage you to get on the internet and Google Dennis Prater. He's got a great piece. It's about 5 to 7 minutes long. I don't know, something like that. And he said, the solution to the problem in the Middle East may be very complicated. But the problem is very simple. One side wants the other side dead. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Now, the solution is a little more difficult.
Actually, I've just got to say, I know where you're coming from. In reality, it's more complicated. At the end of the day, it just takes victory on one side. Yeah. And, of course, we know who we're rooting for there, but, yeah.
Yeah, I could spend, we'd do a couple hours on the Middle East if you want. It's kind of, I mean, it's really, like people think of Islam as monolithic, like it's Islam, the Muslim faith is one faith. It's no more so than Christianity, or Judaism for that matter. I mean, in Judaism, you've got ultra-Orthodox, you got Orthodox, you got modern Orthodox, you've got Reform, all these various, just like Christianity, you got Episcopalians and Presbyterians and Lutherans and Methodists. Well, in the Islamic faith, you got Alawites, which is the minority that Assad belongs to in Syria, the president of Syria. And you got the Sunnis and the Shia and the Hashemites, which is, the Jordan is actually, if you look at the official names, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. So, you got all these various groups, so it's like, yeah, it is complicated, as Prater said. Right.
What's different what they're trying to do to the Jews than what the Nazis tried to do to the Jews?
Well, nothing, really. They're not quite as organized at it as they were. And the Jews are not quite as cooperative. But, it's the same thing going on.
The intentions are the same.
Thank God for Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah.
And you've met him, have you not?
I have. Just met him. I already didn't have a chance to sit down and talk with him, unfortunately. They told me in my first term I shouldn't go anywhere that they're not apt to shoot at me. So I went to Iraq and Afghanistan and some of those places instead of going to Israel. I've been to Israel on my own several times.
All right. Well, thank you for being with us. This is We the People with Josh and Rick on WKM News. Thank you for being with us, Congressman Mike Sodrel. We thank the folks at WKM News for hosting our show, and we hope you'll be back with us in 2 weeks.
And thanks to Harry's, and also like us on Facebook and share us on Facebook, whatever that means. Al.
Thank you.